Hello, and welcome back to Dev Game Club, a weekly podcast in which two veteran game developers look at games from the past to discuss their relevance and impact today. I'm Brett Duville, and I'm joined as always by my co-host, a man who takes the facts of his existence for granted, unaware that they are a thin veneer of desperate self-delusion.
Just like, Tim Longo. That's like definitely hits the nail on the head for this game.
There's some Night Springs for you right there. That's the one where the guy kisses the cult member and like has something inside him. If you found that one,
kisses the what?
He's there. He's like investigating this cult, and they're like, "Oh no, actually, no. You can actually, if you don't mind, you can be a participant in the ritual." And here, give me a kiss, and like, hey, what? Ah! And then suddenly he's got things in his body. It's a whole thing.
No, how did I not find that one?
Yeah, you must have missed that one then.
Are they hidden? I wouldn't have thought that
they're not
hidden.
I mean, it would have been just in one of the buildings. I don't remember where.
I'm pretty thorough.
Was. Yeah,
maybe I'm just forgetting. What was it? Do you remember what it was called? What the title was?
No, I'll look it up though because
I've only seen 2 or 3 of those.
It was episode 3.
And episode 3. Long. That was a long.
No, not episode. Night Springs episodes. I think it was the 3rd one.
Yeah, it's okay. We can.
It's not easy to look up those titles.
But you could have said that the quote was from anywhere in the game, and I would have believed you.
Yeah, sure. Of course.
It's so much word salad.
Yeah, there's a lot of words. It's a game about a writer, so they're always talking about.
I know. But I mean, it's like I think I don't know. We don't want to jump right in, maybe, but I think it's contributing to too much confusion for me about like. I'm hoping I've finished episode 4, so the clicker I think is next for me. So I have 5 and 6. They better wrap it up. That's all I gotta say, because there's nothing really. I mean, I guess I know a little bit now because they revealed Zane and who the lady in black is, and the space, the deep sea diver, and all that kind of stuff. So there's a little bit revealed, and the nature of the lake, which I think is very cool and feels very Control-like. Because in Control, they had the objects of power or whatever they were called, but
that's what they were called. Yeah.
Okay. Did they also have places of power, like significant locations?
Well, you may remember there's that. There's like a huge area where they've moved a whole town.
Yeah, right.
So that's right. Like they just kind of picked up like literally the whole town and relocated into the house, whatever the house is.
Yeah, that was very cool. Yeah.
It's like this huge area. So I imagine so. I think it's a little harder to do that with a lake.
I wonder if there's
it's like the 12th deepest in the world or something like that. So
yeah. I feel like I remember in Control they might have had like a map of the U.S. at some point where they. I just have a vague memory of that, where they were showing certain locations on the map, and I bet that this was what's it called?
Town?
The opposite of Night Springs.
Bright Falls.
Bright Falls, yeah. Which is, so let's see.
Which is situated in the Pacific Northwest.
Right.
You wanted to talk a little bit about. Yeah.
I was about to, because Twin Peaks was filmed in North Bend and Snoqualmie. So North Bend, it's got Bright Falls as a very, fits up here. Northern Exposure was Roslyn.
But that's up in like Alaska, right?
Well, I mean, that's where the show takes place, but it was filmed here.
Oh, right.
Yeah, Roslyn is not far actually from where they filmed Twin Peaks. It's Roslyn, Washington. Bright Falls, like, are there already? Yeah, Snoqualmie Falls. Yeah. Anyway, playing. I think I had always known that it was taking place here, but it's sort of. I'm kicking myself that I haven't played it sooner, because I love the Pacific Northwest so much, and I love horror-y, spooky games, and it definitely is scratching that itch for me. It's not quite. There's something about the geology of it that's not quite hitting right, and the sort of the flora, but generally it's there. And then of course
Yeah, I don't know. It feels very ferny, or I don't know. I don't necessarily associate it with, because we went to like Olympia,
yeah,
and I don't like. I wouldn't have, now looking at Alan Wake, I can sort of see what you're saying. Like it doesn't quite feel right. I don't know what it is either.
Yeah, I can't put my finger on it because I guess like textbook wise, it seems like it checks all the boxes, but it's something about the color palette or something that's not quite there for me. But but it could also be that it's mostly at night, so that changes things quite a bit. But geology wise, like, though there are definitely many mountains up here, I feel like it's a lot more localized in the game, and maybe it's just because of the nature of of it being a video game. But specifically, though, Cauldron Lake, is obviously, I would assume, a riff off of Crater Lake, which is also one of the deepest lakes in the world, and a crater and round. The geology doesn't look anything like it, because that's more of a meteor, I guess, a meteor volcano or meteor lake. But it's also very volcanic there. Anyway, very, very cool. It's one of my favorite places up here. Of course, that's in Oregon, but consider the Pacific Northwest. But I really am curious. I assume maybe there's a dev diary out here someplace that I haven't seen where they talk about it, but I assume they came up here and did some research, because there's a lot of references and things that are close, and it's like kind of in a GTA way, right? Where it's like, it's not New York, but it sort of is, or it's not LA, but it sort of is. And then you just kind of smush it all together, right? All the best bits of it. Because we talked about the diner last time. I think the town is very reminiscent of North Bend and those sorts of towns that are up in the Cascades and near the Cascades. And they don't really hit Puget Sound too much, but when you see the map of the area, it definitely looks like very similar to the map of.
Yeah, you also go over on that weird ferry,
Ferry, yeah.
Which is, it's a very small ferry compared to what you'd actually be on if you were going to an island in the Puget Sound. But it's kind of the gist. That's like a ferry. They actually have ferries like that to cross the Potomac here, small ones like that.
Right, those little ones, yeah. And they used to in the old days, they definitely had those. In fact,
for sure. Yeah.
You live near one of the original piers on the island that had one, the old school. But the funny thing is, like, I think the Seattle ferry system is second only to Norway's in the world as far as size, number of ships, and how elaborate and complex it is. I think the one with the biggest number of ferries is up there. So, but anyway, I appreciate being up here, even though, it's still the video game version. So, but it's specifically Cauldron Lake because just like a silly, useless personal anecdote, the first time I visited Crater Lake was definitely a religious experience because I didn't know what to expect. It's just a very, very kind of weird place when you come upon it. And because you drive up to it and you don't see the lake right away, you have to obviously crest the rim to see the lake. And so it's always kind of revealed in a cool way, sort of, because you walk up and then you see it. And the fact that Cauldron Lake in the game is now turning out to be sort of, well, at least where the story is for me so far. This isn't spoiler for you because you've played before, right?
Correct. Yeah.
That the Cauldron Lake is turning out to be somehow a place of power, or like responsible for, I think what did they say? Art coming to life, or taking some sort of art and, manifesting it. And so that's why the Lady in Black is having him write a story. It's like, so she can have more power. It's like, wow, there's a lot. So it's, I guess, I don't know. Is it a good Stephen King story in that way, because it's just like threads twisted upon other threads, and I'm definitely having a hard time keeping track, though.
Yeah, no, I could see that. I mean, I just kind of let it wash over me and use it as a vibe more than trying to puzzle out the threads.
No, I need to know it all.
Yeah, I know. Well, that might lead to madness. So, I mean, I do think that my recollection is that in chapters 5 and 6, I kind of got to the point of being like, oh, okay, I get, I mean, individual parts of it may not make entire sense in that way, that you'll, if like you took notes the whole time, you might get to the end and go like, but what about, but I've had that happen in Stephen King books.
I felt that way in Control as well, where I don't think I could describe to you the story of Control right now if I had to, you know what I mean? Other than like the brother or something.
Right. Well, it's basically government quasi-governmental institution gets new leader. I mean, that's basically the story.
Yeah, right. And just explore the house. Good luck. Yeah, that's true. Control doesn't have, other than her and her brother, it doesn't have much of a narrative per se. It has a lot of fiction and a lot of lore and stuff, but it's like, you reveal, because that's your brother, right?
Yes. The big power object.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And there's some of the history there. So
you want to talk about fighting bulldozers or something now, or?
Oh, no, I had something else to say about the narrative. I mean, where I have some hope, because in episode 4, if you recall, I guess you played it a few years ago, so you may remember some of this, but there's that section in I think it's in episode 4, because I think it happened pretty recently for me, where you do this very cool flashback sequence where you're following kind of like as a ghost, a first-person entity of some kind. It's really, you're more just a camera, and you're following Alan Wake on the island in the middle of the lake that sank, which of course Crater Lake has one as well. Didn't sink, but it has an island in the middle of it, or near the middle of it. And then you're following him around, and the cool thing about it is, the game opens in that confusing way, because you're not sure why you crashed, and he doesn't know what happened. He wakes up and blah blah blah, and so they're starting to fill in like what happened, right? Like what happened to Alice, and when he jumps in the water, it kind of shows him getting out of the water, and then it shows him meeting Zane, and then of course the woman in black, which I'm blanking on her name,
Barbara Jagger.
Yeah, right. Zane's wife or something.
Girlfriend, but yeah,
girlfriend. Yeah. So, I'm, like you said, with 5 and 6, I'm hoping they start doing more of that funneling, because that was a cool sequence where you basically get to kind of put some of the pieces, connect some of the dots together. And it was done in a cool, unexpected way. I definitely think that's one of Remedy's strengths, is they're very good at finding clever ways to present you with something in an interactive medium that a lot of people don't do.
Right, and that definitely goes back to, as we were talking about last week, their Max Payne sort of stylizations and things. I mean, it's something that's been in their DNA from the beginning. It's one of those things that you look at and say, yeah, that's a Remedy game. That's a Remedy thing that they're doing right there, for sure.
Yeah, it is funny how you can really tell it's a Remedy game, like this game that we're playing, and in many ways you can tell that.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely has the most story. It's one of those games that has an awful lot of stuff. But apparently, they are just getting better and better at this stuff, and they do experiments. And I think they were trying a lot here. We were talking pre-show about playing these episodes rather. Now I'm like, oh, I see why this is the way it is. They started with an open world game that they made not an open world anymore. So what they had this tech, and the world is way more built out than you would necessarily need it to be. There's times where and this contributes actually to a lot of the effective fear for me, and it probably doesn't land as well for you, but like being in the forest at night and being lost, I was like, I mean, you'd be like, okay, well, I'll just clear an area and I'll sleep till morning, and I just
did that recently.
Yeah. I just
hiked in the dark through the forest not long ago. So no, I'm totally fine, comfortable with that, but I get it. That's what Twin Peaks is built on.
Right. Yeah, it's primal, right? You know, it's deep limbic brain stuff. You know, it's like, I got to get, I don't know, into shelter of some kind. And between that and the audio in those sections, you know, getting lost, which is deliberately encouraged by the
yes,
by the collectibles, right? Well, I think it's deliberately unsettling. You know, I think that's. Yeah. I mean, I think that's what they're doing it for. I think that. I mean, yes, they're thermoses. It makes no sense. Like, what are they doing out there in the woods? It makes no sense. Everybody has the same model of thermos. None of it makes any sense. I get it, and there are also the pages which are like, okay, those are like breadcrumbs, sort of like. You know, they're more or less on the. Most of them are on the path, although I have missed some. So I'm always like, I guess I guess at some point I went off the path to look for thermoses, and then came back on the path around, having gone around a manuscript page or something. But I think that is part of their, raison d'etre. There is to. To just push you out of the comforting, narrow lane of linearity, right? Is to, hey, we built all this stuff, might as well find a way to push you out there. And then once you're out there, since it is the dark, you might just feel lost. Like, I get turned around very quickly because, of course, the turn rate on a character in a video game versus my actual human turn rate is very different. And so I find it very easy to be like, wait a minute, which direction was I going? In a way that I don't, in real life. In real life, you kind of like, oh, I was headed that way. You have typically the sun or whatever. So you're like, oh, well, I was going north. So, and here I just I'll get off the path a little ways hunting for a thermos. I'll turn around and be like, oh man, which way do I go now? Like, what am I doing? Mm-hmm. So, and that just leaves me unsettled. And then some taken appear and the strings start going, and I'm all jittery.
The audio design is very good. The music's very good. Yeah. Like they nailed the concept of, Bright Falls and Night Springs and just Twin Peaks and Stephen King, and they just have reference upon reference of other things in the space. I agree. Like when the whispering, I feel like there's whispers in there, and like just when the fog, the shadowy fog starts coming in. I mean, it's heightened by the fact that I really don't have a good time in the combat. So there's other anxieties that come in. But I mean, I definitely intellectually understand the point and the concept of why they're using collectibles in that way. It makes sense. I think we're at Control, of course, which is a game many years later, or quite a few years later, and more modernized, and they've learned a lot of lessons, of course. But I think it's weird. Now, this is probably not too necessary to deep dive on, but to talk about each of the two collectibles for a second, I would be okay with the thermoses.
Have you not been getting the third collectible?
You mean the resources or which?
No, the standees.
Oh no, I didn't know that was a collectible.
It's a thing they track. There's a lot of statistics.
What do you do? Do you pick
I don't know. I haven't done anything with them. There's one in the diner, and I didn't do anything with it. Maybe you read them or interact with them.
No, I didn't. I didn't even look at. I know there are statistics, but I didn't even look at the statistics of what it is. Yeah, I guess I should have. Yeah,
there's not that many of the standees. It's like half a dozen or a dozen.
Yeah, and they make Barry makes a joke about it too, that he brought one all this way, so they even justify it, which is funny. Okay, that's clever. I mean, I appreciate that. That's like on the nose, good cleverness. But I just feel like there's the thermoses have no. I'd be okay because they pull you off of the beaten path and put you in danger if there was some reward to it. But so far, my inclination, my understanding is that it's just, you're just picking them up and they don't do anything.
Well, I think they also pull you off. They don't do anything. No, they're just purely for an achievement. They also, though, knowing that players will go to collect them, it means you'll be shining your flashlight all over the place, and you might find the caches, the weapon caches, which are valuable. So
but I mean, those, I just put, I mean, I think that is actually a better implementation because they use the paint.
Yeah,
and blaze. That goes really directly with the flashlight, because they'll put a bit of yellow someplace as you're flowing through the level design to catch your eye if you look over there, and then it kind of pulls you off. And that's a good reward. It's worth the risk at that point. But then on the flip side, the pages I feel like are critical to the game and critical to the story. So why are you making them a collectible that I can miss?
Right.
And they're very bright often, and so it is hard to miss them most of the time. But like you said, I've missed some too, and it's ironically two things being pitted against each other because I probably missed one because I was going for a dumb thermos.
Yep. And
it's like, why? No, what? You're there. It's just sort of like one hand's not talking to the other, or whatever that saying is. It's not. I feel like they weren't meant for this game, though I understand, of the era, why collectibles are in games. So it just kind of friction. There's friction there.
Yeah,
I think is unnecessary.
Yeah, there's. Well, yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that one set of collectibles, as you say, is there to enrich the narrative. And one set of collectibles is to heighten tension and push you off the path. But doing that takes you away from the narrative. And particularly might make you miss some of those narrative pieces, which is that's the real shame there. I mean, I think if you play it multiple times, I think it just keeps track of them. My recollection is that once you found one, you found it forever. So there's sort of a meta save, which is just you have all these pages. So if you play it on a harder difficulty, in fact, there are pages that are missing. You can't get. You have to play on the hardest difficulty,
which I don't think is unlocked for me. So
no, you have to finish the game to.
Yeah, so you have to play it a second time to get all the pages.
Yeah, and then I think at that point you might. I can't remember if you can. You might be able to go back and play at the end of the game and start from a chapter or start from a checkpoint. I can't remember.
I think you can now. There's a place in the interface where you can go back and look at the episodes, and it looks. I haven't tried it, but when you click on the episode, it asks you what difficulty you want to play.
Oh, okay, yeah. So you can then, yeah. So you could just go back and do it. So there's that too. That it's kind of there if you want to get everything. I don't know. It's. As you pointed out, with Control, they got a lot better at all of this stuff, and they kind of even will tell you where the things are, if you want to go find them, and they're always available for you to go back and go try to hunt down the missing bit of lore, whatever. I mean, that was a game that I 100%ed, for sure, and this one wasn't, right? And there's good reasons for that. So
yeah. I mean, it's very again, we talked about last episode, but we don't often play legacy games out of order, but it's fun to do that in this case because I've played Control, and we didn't play Control for the podcast, but I streamed it.
Well, we talked a lot about it. So
yeah, and it's you can see the legacy. Playing this game, and Control is a really is an excellent game overall. And wouldn't exist without Alan Wake, I think, clearly.
Yeah, and you're the dark presence in that one. Because you have the telekinesis. I'm just joking.
Right. Well, I mean, I think, whether they are direct connections or not, they definitely have an aesthetic that seems very consistent and cohesive. It feels the telekinesis stuff, the objects, all the paranormal stuff. Yeah, I mean, it's the locations of power. I don't know. The next chapter or episode I'm playing is the Clicker. It's called the Clicker, and it's that little whatever switch that he had as a kid.
Right.
That's very Control as far as this random object of power that you're like a toaster. You're like, why do I care about this toaster? Why do I care about this switch?
Because toast that it makes never falls butter side down.
No, it's because it turns into a monster and it kills you.
No, that's okay. Or that, could go that way, I suppose. It's always a possibility. Well, speaking of monsters, I guess the monster topic we really have to start hitting is combat, because you've already alluded to your enjoyment of the combat.
Right.
So what makes you hate it?
Well, I actually forgot about a topic in pre-show that we didn't list, but maybe we'll flag it for next time.
Okay.
Because we'll probably one more episode, do you think? Or we should be able to finish.
Probably. Well, we'll probably be able to finish the main game next week, and then we want to play the DLC and maybe do the takeaways with that.
Okay. So 2 more episodes. All right. So that's more manageable. This
is only the second episode, so
I know. I was just I was getting farther ahead than I usually do. So anyway, so we'll save it we have plenty of episodes left because I want to talk about character physics and character movement and the three C's.
Yeah, the 3 C's.
Yeah. But the reason I bring it up now is because it does relate to combat.
Sure.
The fourth C. Oh no, is that one of the three C's? No, camera, character, control. Character. Yeah, so it is the 4th C. Yeah. Anyway, there's not a 4th C. I just made that up. But the first thing, so I don't want to soapbox too much. I don't want to be too negative, but I think, we've played RE4 on the podcast. We've played RE1. We played Silent Hill. I don't remember how the combat worked exactly in that game. But I think there's, I think the flashlight aspect of it is quite neat and novel and fits really well with everything, right? Like they have such a great light and dark theme in the game, and that's very cohesive. But I remember hearing about the combat when it first came out and people's criticisms. And I also remember people saying, I think you said as well, like normal is not normal or you play on easy or whatever. And I should have played on easy, but I didn't because I wanted to see what everybody was talking about. And I think that there's too many artificial reasons why it's harder than it needs to be. And my interpretation of that, which is maybe unfair, is that they are trying, they want the tension to be high. Combat in survival horror-ish type games is critical because of resources, because it adds to the fright factor and the tension of it, and you feel vulnerable as a human or whatever, right? So those are all good reasons. But I feel like they've really overdone it on making it not feel the way that you need it to feel to succeed at the expense of making you feel like a normal human too much so. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like they're foregoing any kind of player skill in favor of character skill. Yeah, it's like I'm a bumbling idiot, and
you're it's like you're a guy who sits in front of a typewriter all day. It's
yeah. And it's
I can relate.
Yeah, right, exactly. We can all relate to that. And so I get it, intellectually, I was like, yeah, that makes sense. I get it. You're really committing to the bit in that case. But it doesn't make it fun. It doesn't make it makes it frustrating. And really it feels unfair. And they, Are
you finding you're holding back on your resources a lot? Do you use a lot of, the flares and flashbangs? Because I use those a ton.
I'm almost always out.
Okay.
Yeah, no,
that's good. I mean, because I think otherwise you'd be, it'd be really, really bad if not.
I got to one encounter where I ran out of everything, and I had major dudes in front of me. Huh. And I was at a checkpoint, so there's nothing I really could do other than start the whole level over or something. And I had to I played it probably 10 or 15 times, and I just had to squeak through by running to the light. Yeah. And it just it was rough.
Yeah. I mean, I find that some of the bigger open spaces. So the bulldozer scene, and then the other one that's kind of within, I guess it's a train yard or something. You have to turn on the power generator you have to turn off the power generator on one side of the field and cross back because there's some electrical wire that's down over the path. You need to go up. Those were the two that have so far been most frustrating. And they were, one is that I think the thing that really makes it difficult for me is just awareness of what's around you, like what the threats are coming from.
Yeah, they come from behind often, and they do that weird camera cut, which is also like I just consider it a no-no. You don't want to take the camera control away from the player to show the player something that you did wrong. Yes, because it discombobulates you. It's like, where am I facing? And you were just here to show me this character that's about to backstab me. Why are they backstabbing me? It's like, Yeah,
I mean, I use the audio cues way more playing it now than I did the first time, where it's like there's a sound they make right before the thing's going to hit you, whatever it is, where they're going to swing a scythe at you or an axe or whatever, or it's coming through the air. And it's like, now it's just instinctive to just press L1 and he'll auto dodge and it'll slow down time a little bit. You got a little bit of bullet time there. That works pretty well. But I am also like constantly trying to scrabble towards something that feels safe. And in those particular instances, like there's basically this huge field. Unfortunately, I had destroyed the Jeep or whatever crossing the field, to turn off that generator, and so I had to run back. And I'm like, all right, well, I'll let as many of them get close to me as possible at the beginning. Hit the flare gun, clear out a whole bunch of them. I got a bunch of achievements for doing that because I, killed 4 at once, 5 at once or whatever. And then was running and trying to target the explodable, there's these red gas things, propane or something. It's just so I could have little additional flashbangs and then dropping flares, as I went, and I'm just constantly running out of those sorts of the light-based resources. I typically have enough ammo and things like that to kill things. And you may not, because they probably take more to take down if it's still broken on PC. I really don't know the state of it.
Are you playing on normal or easy?
I'm playing on normal, but I'm playing the remastered, and I think what I played before was not a remastered version.
Yeah, I think the remaster is fairly recent, like last year or two.
It's October 21.
I actually started, so I'm playing on PC, I'm playing the remastered. I started actually a mouse and keyboard and found it...
Oh, that's probably unplayable. I wouldn't.
Well, the advantage is, you can aim the guns more literally, but the disadvantage is they don't have crosshairs. And so I actually found I was overshooting a lot because I had all you have is the center of the flashlight, which is fairly vague for crosshairs. So I swapped to controller, and it got easier. And my hope with that was that some aim assist would kick in because I'm using a controller now. And I think I haven't tested it out, but I think it's happening because it would be unplayable otherwise. So I found it easier now that I'm on the controller. It's, the 3 C's aside, because I think each of them are really lacking. But separate from that, they do a great job at making you panic and making you feel like you're in the situation that he is in. Totally, they nailed it. That's great. But most of the time, my anxiety is coming from the fact that I have to play the sequence 5 times before I get through it. Yeah. And, what you want is, you want to almost die. Yeah. You don't want to die every time. Yeah. You want to die maybe once, but then almost die, throughout most of the game and feel that tension. And it's probably all down to tuning, and I know and I do remember when the game came out, it was a bit infamous about as far as its normal being too hard. And it's probably just a tuning challenge. with the 3Cs aside, because I do think camera, the character's very physics-based controls, it feels like, and so it's very imprecise, and I'm sure they're going to say they wanted to make you feel like a real rider who has no business shooting guns and running through the forest.
Yeah.
And if that was what they wanted, they nailed it, so for better or for worse.
Yeah, but that's not really the fantasy we have. So, we want the fantasy that we are the everyman who manages to step up to the challenge. And, I guess we'll get there, but only by virtue of, video game invincibility, right? I mean, you can always reload.
Yeah.
So, I totally agree. I mean, I think that some of the most frustrating scenes have been with inanimate objects. Because they pack a punch, the bulldozer for one, but even just like when that train is like pulling itself apart and throwing different pieces of itself at you. I think you get an achievement for that one. That's Iron Horse. And it's like, yep, I managed to survive that. I mean, at that point I'm like finding ways to put things between me and it. But there were the same problems on that kind of open field where it's like, oh, there's big chunks of metal being thrown at me, or going underneath the train trestles and the train bridge, where the train's going over the top, and then suddenly all the pieces start moving underneath, and it's like it's so dark. I can't tell which things are moving and which are being moved by the physics system because these things are on top of them, and the flashlight can't be everywhere, so it's very distracting, and it makes it. You have to basically learn, okay, that thing's going to be a thing and that thing's going to be a thing.
It's memorization.
Yeah. And so it's like, oh, okay, well, I have to hit that, and then make sure I whip around for this other thing, maybe drop a flare, whatever. I mean, you figure it out, but it's not the sort of like, man, I just got through, and how terrifying was that? It's well, got to do this again. What was the thing that killed me last time? Oh, yeah, I got to remember to turn around at this point.
I think it goes to show, too, how good Capcom has become iterating through survival horror for so many years. And however they've accomplished that, like, it just goes to show how hard it is to do really how well. And I don't mean how to make a scary game or jump scares or that. It's how to make a game with some sort of action and combat feel tense but not unfair, and feel like you're always on the edge of your seat, but you still feel like you are making progress, and not in an unfair way, because those, again, we played RE4 last year, and yes, Resident Evil as a franchise is a bit zany, so they get away with some of the silliness of kicks and and all that kind of stuff. So you're not a writer who's a fish out of water, but still.
You're there for the daughter of the president.
Yeah. But I will say that 7 and 8 are closer to that, where you are not supposed to be there.
Right.
And those feel fine. Those feel great, albeit first person, but still.
Yeah. Yeah. Spooky as they are. Oh, man. That poor guy with his hand.
Yeah. Those are good games. Those are really good games.
They really are. They were a lot of fun to play. Let's talk to you about the combat ratio, because it actually kind of cuts all over the place. As far as that goes, it feels like there's kind of multiple things going on there. But why don't you? I mean, it was your topic, so why don't you kind of broach it?
Well, I think it actually, to say it in a different way, for me at least, I think that the episodes are too long overall. For me, I want to get to the next sort of, I mean, I guess ironically it's a little bit like Control in that way. Like I want the next story beat, I want the next lore drop or whatever it is. And sometimes I think if the combat sort of outlives its welcome, that you feel like I kind of want this to be done. Yeah. So I think I worry a little bit that it's, of the era where a certain hour count needed to be accomplished for the game to justify a $60 price, et cetera, right? So I kind of worry a little bit that they were trying to extend it, to make sure the game was long enough, and they were getting maybe even feedback from somebody about that. Hope not, but let's see. What the original one was Microsoft, right? Published by Microsoft.
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah. So that would be a bummer if so, because I think that if the combat sequences, the number of them were fewer in each of the episodes, I think, and the episodes were tighter, I probably wouldn't. I feel like they would fit better, But there's times when I'm just like, I just finished a couple pretty long combat sequences, and then I maybe get a small story beat, and then right after that, I get another really hard combat sequence. And I'm just like, oh, come on, it's
again.
Yeah, and you don't want that feeling. So, so they could have approached it with shorter episodes, but I just think overall, I feel like I'm fighting too many shadows.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. I do think that the mix, at least in episodes 2 and 3. Were good between adding inanimate objects and like bird sections where there were birds instead of other things, and
they're mixing it up more. Yeah,
and I think that works to its advantage. And but I don't disagree with you. I definitely feel like there's maybe a little too much of that in the game. I felt that most strongly in the first episode, going through the lumber yards and stuff, where it's just like, oh my God, again, and there are definitely sections in the woods where, I think some of those are timing. Like it feels like sometimes when you're in the woods, it's a pressure to push you forward. Like they're not.
I'm dying too much, and that makes it feel longer.
That could be that, but it also could be that you're, if you spend time like scouring for the thermoses, then you're going to have the sort of procedurally generated ones coming in more often. I don't think every monster is bespoke. I think when you're in the woods, they tend to just kind of arise every so many, minutes or whatever, seconds or something.
So if that's the case, then that would be hard to tune. You think the resources are then also procedural if they do that?
Yeah, well, you may have noticed that there's times when there's like just a box with like an inexhaustible number of bullets in it or something, typically before a set piece. So you always want to make sure you're totally loaded up after one of those if you can, and things like that.
I just assume those are all discreetly placed though, but if the enemies are not, then maybe they do dynamically.
Yeah, I wonder about that. I also spend a lot of time, and this is not great either. There are times where I'm just like, okay, well, there's nothing coming after me now. I'm in a spot where I don't think it's going to procedurally generate anything. I'm just going to sit here and let the flashlight recharge, which is also not a fun.
And my health. I've done that with my health too.
Yeah, I've done that with my health too, which is also very slow. In fact, I think it's slower than the flashlight.
Yeah.
They do have a little bit of progression in the weaponry. You can only carry so much stuff, right? You can carry 2 types of flash thing, so flares and flashbangs. You can carry 1 each of a handgun, long gun, and the flashlight. I think, is that right? Feels right.
The flashlight.
Oh no, flare gun.
Flare gun on one, and then the pistol. I haven't found a different pistol, but
you haven't found a shotgun though, and
I found you shotgun
or hunting rifle
between a shotgun or hunting rifle. Yeah,
right. So there's 2, and there have been 2 types of shotgun. So they're progressing those as well. Yeah. You start with a sort of a traditional a double barrel, I guess, and then a pump action, which carries maybe 5 or 6 shells, and then you've got the hunting rifle that occupies that same spot. I don't know if there's a pistol upgrade. I feel like there is, but I like that you get the equivalent of like a Magnum or something later. That'll make a one-shot kill of most of the things with a pistol.
Yeah, I've never been so excited to get a new, better flashlight in a game though.
Yeah, like, you get the heavy duty,
and
then and there are 2 types of batteries too. So regular batteries and lithium batteries.
Oh, okay. Are those listed differently then, or
I don't know how maybe they're all lithium batteries, and I'm just making that up. I could have sworn like at a certain point I was like, oh, that's a lithium battery. And maybe it's just in my head, like I didn't notice it before it was lithium batteries.
You could be right. I just haven't noticed. I mean, I guess my point is there's only one number listed for batteries, and I wasn't sure if you could choose between them. But yeah, the battery mechanics, it's weirdly tuned. It definitely is tuned to add tension, which I do like. And I really love the flashlight mechanic and like the idea of it. The concept of it is like really cool and spot on, and it fits the game really well. The imprecision of it is hard for me because I really tend to like very finely tuned things. And I don't always understand, I know there's a ring that closes in so when you're about done, kind of like, sizzling a guy or whatever. But it's just imprecise enough where I'm not ever quite sure, how far I have. And so it's just vague enough. But the whole recharging of the battery of the flashlight thing where it prompts you, I guess maybe what it is I have a hard time watching the flashlight bar in the middle of combat because I'm panicking.
Right.
I think that's what they want you to do. But when they prompt you to put a new battery in, it's like you're almost out. And then when you put a new battery in, it doesn't actually give you that much.
Yeah, no, it's like, a quarter or something like that.
So you're constantly like burning batteries if you want it. So it definitely adds to the fright factor and like tension of it. But then at the same time, somebody's rushing you, right. and or more often than not, somebody's backstabbing you.
Yeah.
And you have no, very little idea. But to your point, maybe I should be using audio more. I'm playing with headphones, but I don't know why they didn't do off-screen indicators, though. I mean, maybe they were trying to not break immersion or something. But
yeah, that would be my suspicion. Like, I think that's what the audio, though, is totally cluing me in. I know where. I mean, I'm playing in surround, so I know exactly where they are. And it's really adding to the panic as well. And then it does make those moments where I dodge, which is pretty frequently now. I've got makes those really rewarding because I do feel connected to Alan Wake's body in those moments because the way he's dodging is the way I would dodge based on the sound I'm hearing in my living room. I'm dodging forward to the left because it was over my right shoulder, in my surround setup. So I do find that super effective, to use a Pokemon term. But yeah, it's generally speaking, though, the combat is vexing. And I do remember, did you have to restart to change? Oh, you can't change. You didn't change difficulty. You're just...
No, if you play an episode, just go back and play an individual episode. You can change the difficulty, but the save that I have, I would have. I actually looked and the settings like, can I change this anytime I want?
I think I did that too when I played it originally, and I still don't know. I mean, we're playing the remaster, so I have to assume they fixed that problem because when I originally played it on stream, I was playing the original PC release.
What problem?
The problem where easy was normal and normal was hard.
Oh yeah, it doesn't seem that bad.
Yeah,
maybe. Yeah.
So
because it's right on the edge.
I was like, I can't believe they shipped the game with this as the normal difficulty. And then I went and I ended up restarting. And I remember, and at that point I was like, this is crazy. I looked it up and I'm like, wait a minute, this is just a bug. This is just, this is literally like, you see this in the menu code, like, if you press this, set this value. Like, why would they not patch this? Like, I was just like, having a developer moment of crisis at the time. Just like, how do you not? You have to patch that. It's on the PC. It's the easiest thing to patch. I was like, oh my God.
Crisis. Yeah.
So anyway.
I think another topic for next time, because I know we're getting up on time. I want to talk about character, the 3 Cs next time. We can do a little bit more deep dive on that because there's a lot to say, even with like the platforming and stuff that they do. It's all physics based or something, so it's very. I get trespasser vibes from it sometimes. Albeit third person instead of first. But then the other topic I want to talk about is just which we won't have time today to do, is just talking about him as a character.
Yeah,
and
Alan Wake himself.
all of that stuff. And it's very, the great thing about Remedy is they commit, they pick their direction, they go for it. It's not going to be for everybody when you do that. And yeah, I'm just not a fan of
he's
playing as this character. Yeah.
Yeah, he really is. He should thank his lucky stars for Alice.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. Well, and then it wasn't a spoiler, but I saw a trailer or I read something about Alan Wake 2, and apparently he's still looking for Alice in that game. I'm like, really? Is that really what? Come on. I've heard it. I mean, sounds like that game's really good though. Sounds like they've really nailed it. And so I am excited to play it after this, but come on, no more, no more fridging.
Well, yeah, I think he was even in American Nightmare. I think that's why he was in the location he was in that weird little spin-off game that was not a true sequel.
He's looking for Alice?
I think so, yes.
Yeah.
Which is, of course, I mean, it's a whole literary reference to itself with it being Alice as well. So,
yeah.
It's a whole thing.
Wake is looking for Alice. Yeah.
All right, let's do some email. Catch up on the email. devgameclub@gmail.com is where those were sent. I just want to make sure I think I have 2 here. Yes, I do. And I think I sent you 2 as well, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Let's hit the first one. I think it's long, but maybe not a lot of discussion points.
Okay, subject is when devs go off the rails. It's from C. Ross. Hi, Brett and Tim. As you may or may not be surprised to hear, I've been enjoying your series on Arkham Asylum and had a takeaway on that game that I would like to share. For me, the most memorable part of this game was the intro to the second Scarecrow section. I remember traversing through the asylum and coming to the hallway where Scarecrow secretly doses you with his toxin before you start the hallucination. As I came into view of the hallway, I got that nagging tug to the back of my brain that us experienced gamers get before the start of a serious encounter or set piece. It just felt like I was about to be ambushed. In the hallway are some beams that you are able to grapple to out of the view of enemies. In this case, it looked like I'd be able to use these beams to walk to the door at the end of the hallway, safe from the certain ambush. I cautiously made my way across, tension building with every inch, but nothing ever happened. When I passed the point where I felt like I should have triggered something, I laughed at myself for my own paranoia, jumped down, and began more casually toward the door. I had only taken a few steps when all of a sudden the screen froze and filled with an assortment of static and audio crackled common. The audio crackled common to the old PC crash. Oh, wow. At first, I was just a little miffed at the unknown amount of time I probably just lost. My second thought made my heart stop. I was playing on an Xbox 360. On a device that I wasn't sure had been produced after the dreaded Red Ring of Death plague. The screen went black, and I looked to my Xbox expecting to see the red blinking lights, but to my confusion, everything seemed fine. After what felt like an eternity of looking from the screen to my Xbox and back again, a cutscene started and the game resumed. Scarecrow messing with Batman was all just a ruse for the dev messing with me. While the sequence technically takes you out of the experience, quote unquote, the emotions I felt were exactly in line with what the game was trying to do. Yes, it was possible that it landed a little harder for me than most. I was a poor college student at the time and couldn't afford to replace or repair a broken box. This experience has stuck with me through the years, not because it was some grand set piece or huge technical achievement, but because of what it did to me as a player. Thank you for the work you do to create this podcast for us, the listeners. C. Ross.
And you're welcome, if that is your real name, C. Ross. Yeah, I mean, the heightened like the particular platform you're playing on it, and knowing that it is, it has issues. It does feel particularly cruel.
Yeah.
I can just imagine.
Convergence of things, of lots of things, right, coming together to make that even more heightened for him, or for them, and that's a great. Weirdly, just today, at work, a few of us were talking about Psychomantis and Eternal Darkness,
like you do.
Yeah, like you do. I don't remember what. I think we were just talking about times when games were taking more risks, than they seem to these days. And I would put this in there too. But, it's like Scarecrow's perfect, right? Yes, it's a riff of everything in this space is a little bit of a riff off of Psychomantis stuff. But Scarecrow's perfect conceit for that, and fooling with it. I remember playing when we did Eternal Darkness 2, and the fly on the TV definitely got me, It was just dark enough in the room where I was like, what the hell?
And my TV had that same font when there's a section where it's like you get the purple, something to do with the TV. I don't remember what it says, like video or whatever. It says something.
Your input changes.
Yeah, input change. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and back when I originally played it, I was playing it on a CRT where that was exactly what my TV did. It's like literally the same font. I definitely appreciate those sorts of things. All right, I have one here from Mr. E. Dip. It says, hi, Brent. The subject is licensed games. Hi, Brent and Tim. I was just playing the Lego Movie video game with my son, and we went through a part where in the movie, the two main characters go through a portal from the city to the Old West. In the game, it was so disorienting, I had to look away for a second just to not get nauseous, which naturally immediately led me to a game dev question. Yeah, I have the game dev questions whenever I'm nauseous. What do you do if the storyline of a licensed title conflicts with good game design practices? In my example, I think they extended gameplay of a part that could have been more straightforward, but I'm curious on where you two would draw a line. Should you remain fully true to the source, or do what makes for a good game? Would you remove a character that has good story value but poor gameplay value? Drop the romance section from an action game? ? Regards, Mystery Dip. Well, there you go, sir. You've worked on even more licensed titles than I.
I'm kind of searching the databanks a little bit. I kind of have gotten away with, it's an interesting question because now that you mention it, I'm kind of coming to this minor revelation as we speak on air live.
Whoa.
I've kind of I have worked on a lot of licensed titles, for better or for worse. I do enjoy working on them, but I kind of have gotten away with a bit of a trick, because if I think about the Starfighter games, like licensed, but we created our own characters, our own situations for the most part. We sometimes leverage real characters, but it wasn't often as a main character. So we had a lot more, even though licensed, we had a lot more control. Republic Commando, similar way. Tomb Raider, we were rebooting, right? So we could actually do a little bit more going on there, at least, when I was there. Halo is definitely the more challenging one because there's tension that's built into that franchise from a fiction and lore perspective that definitely pushes back on some gameplay stuff too much. But it's such a defined thing that it's like you don't really have to overthink it either. So I don't know. Maybe I've skirted that issue for quite a while. But to answer his fundamental question pretty simply, like I will bend over backwards for gameplay every time. And cutting a character is extreme. What I would probably, without a good example, what I would probably do if I had to be in that situation is just find a way to bend the character to fit what we need for a gameplay purpose, rather than just cut them all together. But if you're working, depending on the license, if you're working with a big enough license, then you probably have flexibility, swapping characters out or or doing something, but if you're literally like play the movie game, which I haven't worked on something like that literally before, then yeah, I can see where he's going as far as like, you can't take, Gandalf out of a Gandalf game, and he's too powerful or whatever it is, So like, how do you level up Gandalf? I'm just a random example. Yeah. Well, I guess Superman is the perfect example that always comes up, right? There hasn't been a good Superman game, and I think people would definitely be confused on how to tackle that.
He actually had sent a follow-up PS, which I'll read now, but I was gonna pop it on you if what he mentioned in the PS happened, which is he says, I know the first thing Tim would do is sigh and say it's a huge topic that is sometimes months of debate on a project, but just looking for some examples of how you would handle being in charge of producing a game based off of one of your favorite books, movies, etc. He didn't fall for it. Mystery. I'm sorry.
I actually answered it this time rather than
tried to rather than to it. Yeah, I mean, I think it's. I agree with you. I mean, I'll take it kind of from a different lens. I would say what you're trying to do with anything that you're adapting is adapt, right? And what you have to maybe sometimes step back and do is say, okay, what is the feeling that's supposed to be happening as a result of this? And not like, how do I slavishly follow what somebody else did with this, story beat or whatever, you think about, I've definitely read a number of books that, people say are not adaptable, and then they get adapted and you're like, actually that was a pretty good job. Barbie, like, how do you adapt Barbie, and then, or even the other one this year with Oppenheimer, like that book was a doorstop, it's you have to try to capture some essence of what's going on there in a 2-hour film format, or probably I guess 3 hours in that case, but whatever. You have to you're working in something different, and so you have to adapt, and the way you adapt is try to capture the essence of the thing. And Scorsese's latest is another fine example of, you have to find economic ways of reproducing the feeling you had, reading the thing, or watching the thing when you're making the thing playable. I think is Alan Wake is, it's obviously not an adaptation of anything in particular, but it is trying to make into a game the worlds of Stephen King or, Twin Peaks or what have you.
Yeah. It's a licensed game without being licensed.
Exactly. Yeah.
I forget if he said this at the top of the mail. Maybe he already said it, but we talked about this with Arkham Asylum. I mean, I think that is a really good example of this, right? It's like they adapted, to your point, Batman into their own sub franchise, which they didn't know at the time they were creating one, but they did. And it gave them flexibility to do certain things, especially make Batman much more of a jerk, or whatever, fool with the way that the combat worked or the violence or whatever. And it gave them some flexibility. Of course, they still had Warner Brothers out there approving things and such, but because they took a turn to do their own thing, it gave them some flexibility, but it still very much felt like a Batman game. We talked about on the podcast, like, how do you give Batman RPG elements? He's already Batman, but who cares? Like, it worked. It was fine. I don't mind.
I guess we have time to tackle another email or two.
This one's pretty short. I don't know if there's a question, but
okay.
Max Payne remaster from.
Oh, Brandon. Yeah, this is just a point of information. Yeah, so we do have time for sure.
Hi, DGC. In your recent episode on Alan Wake, Brett mentioned that he hasn't played the second game and would play a remaster if one were to be made. Thankfully, a little while ago, Remedy announced that they are doing a full remake of the first 2 games in a single package with full funding by Rockstar Games. Thought I'd let you know. Thank you. Thanks, guys. Love the show. Brandon.
Yeah, thanks, Brandon.
I did see that.
Yeah, somebody pointed that out on the Discord as well. Was Yeah, I'm not entirely up on what the status is of every. There was a time where I used to have like, documents of like this game's coming out at this date and whatever, and now I'm just like it just washes over me. And maybe something cuts through to me. I've become a less reachable audience in some ways to some of this news because I don't follow any real sites and I don't listen to too many podcasts about stuff anymore. Not like used to. So, because who has the time? But I appreciate somebody, pointing out, several people pointing out that that is in fact coming, and I will check it out because I would like to play. I would like to have the feeling of Max Payne again. I thought that as I mentioned, Max Payne 3 was very playable, and everything. It just didn't feel as Max Payne-y to me. And I'd like to kind of be back in Remedy's version of the world. So
it's interesting that Rockstar is funding that with their whole Epic. I mean, they own the IP, so maybe they would have to be the ones, or they'd have to give the rights to, because the Remedy did that whole Epic deal. But
right.
But actually, 505 Control was not. Forget who published. Anyway, yeah, that's interesting.
Control is published by 505. Yeah, good for Rockstar for sure. All right, I have one here that is Women and DGC from Moss Neotech. Hey, Tim and Brett, I just wrote up an email that took me about an hour to write and delete because I was trying to be precise with my language. So before I spend more time on it, I want to know if it's an idea that Tim and Brett would even want to entertain. You two have done what I would say is at the very least a good job of getting women on the cast. But beyond your efforts and through what the Discord is now with people displaying their pronouns, women are missing. Would you be interested in answering an email about that and why that is? So we are. He says, it's not topical. It's a remarkably tough discussion about stuff that you may have incomplete information. But as long as you promote the Discord and as long as I see he, him next to most folks and not she, her, or no she, her, it's becoming a point of interest for me. Let's see. I'm going to skip a little bit. He says, I realize this is an effing firestorm and BS volcano waiting to happen, but I wrote the email and you two can decide if it's worth discussing on the cast. If it's not, then even simply telling me it's not worth talking about is good enough for me. Let's play some Jackbox again, Moss. That is a reference to my old streams where I used to do Jackbox as a cool down after I played something else. I probably should have had you read parts of this email because I probably have the most insight on at least some things. One of the things that we don't really do about this podcast is promote it in any way, shape, or form. We just do it and tell all of you, hey, tell a friend, give us a review. And that's pretty much it. Like, we do literally nothing. I'm not even pushing it on Twitter anymore, since I'm not on that platform, which had a larger audience than the podcast had. I'm not pushing it there. Tim's not either. We don't really go out and push it. So the biggest bump we ever had, and this sort of sustaining jump in our listenership, was from our Final Fantasy IX mention on Kotaku back then, which was Jason Schreier wrote a little article at the time about what we were noticing about Final Fantasy IX. And that was kind of what kickstarted the podcast into the listenership it has, and it's just been declining. So we're not reaching new listeners, really. And we're also playing games that, maybe historically were in an era which was less welcoming to women in the industry as well. So I feel like those are kind of some factors. Like, we basically never set out to reach any particular audience, and we're not kind of stretching out to reach new audiences either. So we're not focusing on that. And I guess it's just not happening as a result. That would be my kind of, I know there are women who listen to the cast, but I don't know if they're still listening. We've definitely had emails from women in the past. Yeah, that's all I have. If there are women listening to the cast still who are not interested in the Discord, I'd love to hear why. We do try to make it pretty welcoming, but your thoughts, sir?
I think your summary is good as far as how we get to this place. I actually think about this a lot. Brett and I don't talk about it really that much, but when it comes to guests, the industry hasn't been good about this for a long, long time and is still not good. And we're playing games in the past where we need to, really promote the women developers who are on these games more than we do. And I have been very personally, though I haven't mentioned it to you all or Brett, and I should, I've been very aware of the Discord and about, the attendance there as far as this goes. And I think about it all the time. And I do think, you make a good point, Brett, that the games we're choosing could impact this. We are two white males.
Yeah, the hosts don't help.
And that doesn't help, and so that's why we definitely need more women on as guests at the very least. But I think the games we choose could definitely help. So that's something to think about. And I don't know, it really does bum me out. It's something we talk about at work a lot, even with our own company. And it's, it's an important aspect that we're trying to do better as developers in our space. And so we could definitely be doing a much better job for the podcast. But like Brett said, it's such a side thing for us. And we don't do promotion, and we don't kind of, for things like this, when it comes to audiences, you would really want to build a plan, a real plan around.
Yeah. You'd have to
goals.
Really think about how you're going to market it to reach those people.
And we don't do anything.
Yeah.
You're, not to put it back on you, Moss, or the community, but you are our plan when it comes to promotion. so it's not putting it back on your shoulders, because I think it really is on our shoulders. But I think thinking about our games, thinking about our guests, and then I think getting the word out there as best as we can as a community, including Brett and I, but including you too, of how do we, because game development and learning from these past games, both the good and the bad, because I hope that we try to do our best to bring up topics from some of these past games where they are not handling, gender in a great way at all, and it created the situation we're in today with our industry, with many industries, obviously. Society and culture in general is still challenged in this area. So,
yeah, the historic precedents are really unfortunate as well. Because, video games basically came along as an engineering-led effort, because the first games were basically one person working on them, and that because you need an engineer, that person was an engineer, and there are so few women engineers in the field at the time, because through the period immediately preceding, like the decade or so before, there was a real demand. There had become a real demand for engineers, and the way companies would justify paying more was if it became a male-dominated field, because of just how sexist our culture is. They basically needed to push the women out so that men would come in, so that they could get more, because not as many women were in the workforce, right? So it was just it's all this demographic BS that was just overhanging, not even from games, that kind of started games down this path to begin with. And there were companies that pushed back against that, who tried to position games as for everyone and things like that. Nintendo certainly did. Even their old Atari stuff was that way. But the mere fact of the industry being male dominated because engineering dominated, and engineering being male dominated because of the preceding 15 or 20 years of effort on the parts of the wider computer science industry. It's just it was a perfect storm as far as that goes. And again, we're playing titles from that are typically older than what we're playing now. So it's tough. It's tough.
Yeah, and it's such a male dominated industry for so long, and because we're playing those classic games, being the one, I mean, Brett definitely pitches in on guest searches, but a lot of the times we're using our networks that are coming from, we lucked out in the case of LucasArts where the demographics there were better than most companies, but still not great. And the credits for these games that we're playing, being the one that is often looking through them and seeing what options we could. And I do reach out to lots of people that I don't know, but oftentimes it ends up being, somebody in our network or 6 degrees of separation kind of situation. And so I think, I'll definitely take the feedback to heart. And I'm glad, Moss, thank you for writing the email and bringing it up, because I think it's something we should talk about. And it is a truism of especially our community. And I've noticed all along, and I think about it all the time, especially when we're thinking about guests. So it's one to think about and to see if there's something we can do.
One thing I will say is that our negative reviews are probably our best ambassadors as far as this goes, because we have gotten some 1-star reviews out there from very gatekeepery men who don't want us to talk about issues of sexism in games. They don't mind telling us that at great length if need be. And unfortunately, negative reviews are not typically the things people read and go, "Oh, that might be for me."
Right. The reverse PR.
Yeah. So, anyway, it's a useful topic, and again, it's not something we've kind of planned. Really, it's funny. I had not looked at our numbers in quite a while. I realized that when I was like, I wonder what our, how many we're reaching. We're down like, I guess 30% roughly from our high, something like that. I mean, I'd have to look. I just looked at like the last few, so I'd have to look at a kind of a bigger trend to see what it is really, because it does inflate over the next several weeks after episodes come out. And I only looked at the last handful, but but we used to get between 2,000 and 2,500, and now we're more like 14 to 1,600 in those first couple of weeks. And so, declining audience and not having marketing of any kind just means that's, it's going to be harder to reach those, to reach folks that didn't happen to buy in when they bought in. So,
yeah. Thanks for bringing it up. And I think we need to keep at it.
Absolutely. And on that happy note, we will see you next week. Those were sent to devgameclub@gmail.com. We also love to get reviews and, or tell a friend, a female friend. You can find us on the web at devgameclub.com, on Twitter at devgameclub, or twitching at twitch.tv/
Tim Longo Jr. with a JR at the end, though not tonight.
Not tonight, although it's already past that.
Weeks, Lex.
When you're here. Yeah, you've been doing it. I've been showing up, and even last week when I was at Death's Door, I showed up for like 2 minutes, and then I was like,
"Where'd Brett go? Oh, I hope he's okay."
I just closed it because I was like, "Oh man, the screen is giving me a really bad headache." I was in rough shape last week. Thanks for the week off. We also have a Discord. The link will be in the show notes. Our intro and outro music was written and performed by Kirk Hamilton, commissioned by friend of the cast Aaron Evers, and our logo, of course, as well as our merch store and the Discord and lots of things, are by Mark Garcia. He also keeps track of when Tim streams. Have fun finding all those pages this week, and good night.
Nope. Good night.